Hey, let's talk about family nurture groups. So these would be a way for you to bond with your children and help the family learn to come together, even when things kind of aren't going maybe the way you'd planned. So we can adapt something called the nurture group and make it part of like a family night. Okay, so the nurture group idea is part of the program Trust-Based Relational Intervention, or TBRI. Now, TBRI uses nurture groups in group homes and day camps and as a therapeutic intervention in families like ours caring for children who have come from trauma backgrounds. So these nurture groups done in formal settings have had quite a bit of success, anywhere from the wiggly, unfocused ones all the way up to like teens. Um, and so I want you to keep that in mind as we go through and talk about this, because you might be thinking, I don't know if my children would get into this. So have an open mind, but in the end, you decide how much of this that you would want to incorporate into your own home. So there's you can use many of the ideas from TBRI and adapt them to your family, and that's kind of what we're doing here. Is we're taking that and we're adapting it to the idea of family night. Okay, what you'll be doing is you'll be in a fun way with your family, teaching and training on some of the principles of TBRI, such as regulation, playful engagement, connecting, correcting. Okay, these are all pillars of TBRI. So adapting it to your family is pretty simple. What we're going to do is we're going to take the basic principles of nurture groups and turn them into a family night. Okay, so this is what, if you choose to do the full program, these are the components, right? So it's going to be loosely structured around setting rules, checking in, skill building, giving and receiving nurture, a teaching time, more nurture, talking about feelings, and then a closure activities. Okay, now I'm going to go into greater detail about each one of these in the written portion below this video. So I'm just going to give a brief overview here on this video. The first one is setting ground rules. So it's always a good idea to set expectations and ground rules. You want the evening to be fun and fluid and loose, but not a free-for-all, right? So there's some ground rules that will be set. The next part would be checking in. So if you've ever been to a conference or a teaching where you're in a group with maybe people that you know and some people that you don't know, you might notice that there's always like an icebreaker question or two or an icebreaker activity. That's kind of the same idea that we're doing here. I mean, it's the family, so everybody knows each other, but it's kind of just that, an icebreaker, right? So there'll be some questions that you can ask, like, tell us something about yourself that nobody knows. If you could be any animal, what would you be? What's the silliest thing you've ever done? Kids love when parents answer that question, I got to tell you. The next part of this would be the skill building part. So the skills that we're talking about would be skills of regulation. So one thing that's really fun to do during this part is to come up with some ways to get everybody physically dysregulated in a fun way. Play loud music, play musical chairs, jumping jacks, jump up and down, get the heart rate racing so that when you teach regulation skills, calming techniques, they can literally feel the calm. And we'll go into some details about that in the written portion. The next one is giving and receiving nurture. Now, this one can be perhaps the most difficult for your kiddos that come from trauma, abuse, neglect backgrounds, because you're going to be literally giving and receiving nurture, and care from one another. So what I suggest doing is breaking this up into two sort of sections. So you'll have one section of giving and receiving nurture, a teaching time that's kind of fun and silly, and then more nurture. The next, so the teaching time would be teaching the right way and the wrong way to do something. Okay. Now what you're going to do is you're going to pick one or two scenarios that you've noticed throughout the week that are issues, like maybe issues between the siblings, right? So if you notice that maybe they're having a problem respecting boundaries for one another, or certain squabbles or something, you can use that scenario to teach this. All right. When you do it that way, you're helping them to practice what's the right way to handle the situation, but you're doing it in a way that doesn't cause shame that they're caught doing it wrong. And you'll get more details about that too in the written portion. So after that, that's the one that's sandwiched in with the second nurturing, giving, and receiving care. And this one is done through feeding each other candy. The last main thing that you do before the closing activity would be talking about feelings. Now, we wait until the end to talk about feelings because with all the other activities that have been going on, at this moment, probably everybody's kind of feeling close to each other. They're feeling safer. They're feeling more comfortable with each other. So this would be the time that you would talk about some of the big feelings. So you could toss a ball around and share something that makes you sad. What is something that makes you disappointed, frustrated, that kind of thing. And what this does is it helps name feelings and normalize those big feelings. Then the last thing is that closure activity. You always want to review those rules again and then do some kind of a closure activity. Some families have come up with like a family handshake. You could do that, where everyone's in a circle and you do that sort of take turn squeezing hands. Any kind of activity that you can come up with that kind of signifies you're in this together as a family. A lot of families will close in prayer, which I think is fantastic, or reading a meaningful scripture or some other kind of empowering verses or something. So the other thing I want to say is just make sure that when you have these basics down, feel free to make it your own for what works for your family. Your goal would be not that everybody does every aspect of it, not that everybody participates to a certain level, but I feel like that the goal should be that the family, each individual, looks forward to it whether you do it every week or every month or every other month. Set your expectations low. Don't force participation, right? Don't make it mandatory. And if utilizing every one of those points, every one of those aspects of it, if that's too much for your family, that's okay. You don't use all of them then. If you already have a family night that's going really, really well, don't dump that for this, right? Maybe what you'll want to do is take one or two aspects of this and incorporate it into what you already have going on. You know your family best, right? So the way that you use, whether you use it all the way or whether you pick out certain parts of it, it's still going to be a nurturing, connecting time for the whole family.